my new family needs to come first. And that other one is a big culture shock.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. I hope you're having a wonderful day as always. So today we have another International Spotlight interview. I'm very excited about this one. I say that about every interview that I have had so far, but I just get very excited to hear other people's stories and compare them to my story and my experiences. And it also makes me very happy to be able to use my platform to share other people's experiences with you guys as well. Today, I interviewed Maria, who is a Venezuelan immigrant in the United States, and she was also an international student here as well. We talked about some challenges, and also we talked about some great, amazing things that her life in the United States has brought for her. And she gave a lot of very, very good, very valuable advice to anyone who is in a similar situation. So her story is definitely very interesting. And again, I want to remind you guys that if you are an international student, if you're an immigrant, a child of immigrants, or even if you are a US person who is currently living in another country, you are more than welcome to email formshelp.international@gmail.com. I would love to hear your story, and I'm sure many other people on this channel would also appreciate hearing your story. Today's video is definitely a long one, but I hope that you enjoy it. And now, without further ado, let's jump into today's interview. So today we have Maria. I'm very excited for this interview in particular because we have been long-term followers of each other. She has been following me on YouTube for a while. She actually reached out to me first. I think she has one of the most interesting stories out there that I think can help a lot of people. So why don't we start just by introducing you and where you originally came from and how you ended up in the US in the first place.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. Really, I think this is very exciting and it's gonna be good for a lot of people. So I'm from Venezuela, that's in South America, near Colombia and Brazil. And I've been in the US for about 7 years now. So I came with a student visa. I came to complete a master's degree in human resources management. And it's been a wild adventure since.
Can you talk a little bit about what attracted you to the United States before coming here in the first place? What made you want to come here to study?
Yes. Well, one thing that I was definitely attracted to was the education system and the opportunities to further my career, my professional advancement. I studied psychology in my country. So the things were really and still are really bad in my country, but in terms of education opportunities, they were shutting down around that time. I graduated from university, you could say college, but really call it university, 5 years studying around 2013. And there weren't really other possibilities for me to pursue a master's there. So that's why I looked at the US. And yeah, when I came visiting one time, I came to visit on. I went to different schools and, I saw the curriculums and I liked it. I thought that this was it.
So I have had a lot of people reach out to me, international students who want to study in the US, but a lot of the times they are in the very beginning of the process where they don't even know where to begin looking. Because when you think of going to another country, it's huge and there's so much to consider. How was the process for you in terms of finding the schools, contacting them, finding out where they are? Can you talk about that?
Yes, that's an interesting question because I had a tough time with finding the right school, honestly, even though I came here in person. I started going to the places. So I came to the area of Miami. That's where my aunt was living at the time. And, took the word for the locals to say, hey, we go to this college, this university, Miami-Dade College, FIU, Kaiser, all the big ones, Miami University. And really, their department for international students wasn't what you would think. They don't really offer you a lot of information, or they didn't back then in 2014. Maybe now it's improved. But basically, they would be asking my information for student loans, as in I'm a local student trying to sign in. And I was like, no, that's not me. And then they would be like, okay, then you need to pay out of pocket this amount of money. And I was like, that doesn't go either. I don't have all of that out of pocket right now with me, or yeah. So it was interesting. I shot I want to say 8 different universities in the area, um, until a friend of mine, the day before I was going back home, completely just feeling like I didn't make my goal. She
Yeah.
took me to this small university that happened to be founded by Venezuelan university directors. So like they had their own place or their own university in another part of Venezuela, which I wasn't even familiar with because I'm not from that city. And then they opened this place here in South Florida, and they were making the process much more easy for international students. Like the majority of the students really that go there are international. So that in itself was a breeze, because then they gave me the I-20. They explained to me the whole process. How was I supposed to go to the embassy in my own country, the kind of documents I needed to show, how much money I needed to show in bank accounts or showing affidavit of support, which is what I ended up doing.
Mhm.
So it just made the process much easier. And it ended up working out well, because then I had a lot of classmates that were also international students. And I read online how some people feel out of place because they're the only international student in a class full of American students. So for me, this was an advantage, definitely.
That is such an interesting experience. It's definitely very different from a lot of people. So, what I'm getting out of this, I guess, is that the importance of connections, really, and trying to connect to as many people as possible and ask for different resources and just asking questions.
The thing is that I feel like we have to make it a little easier for the university and identify ourselves as international students when coming in. So I feel like that's something that obviously I didn't know at the time. They didn't know either. They just asked for my social security number, and I was like, I don't have one. I've been here for 2 weeks visiting, but they couldn't put the two and two together.
Yeah.
So I identified ourselves as international students, and then asking what are the options in terms of payment, financing,
Mhm.
if there's any, because some big universities do offer scholarships. I found out after the fact for international students before they even begin. In my small university, you had to keep a certain GPA for your first semester to be able to apply for one. But others do offer it from the beginning. And if somebody's looking from their own country, then they can call and speak to somebody specifically targeted towards international students.
I think trying to find the international students office at the university that you're interested in is the first major step, and asking what are some of the funding opportunities. Have you had any experience applying for scholarships outside of what the college was offering?
No, you see, that's another thing. In my country specifically, education used to be free for the most part. I wasn't familiar with the amounts of money that it takes to complete a career in the US. So the whole process, really, I did it with the help of the staff at my own university. Like they send emails with instructions and follow up. Then later on, the I think I should give a shout out to my university, Millennia Atlantic University in Doral, Florida. They were amazing. The president even reached out himself to the students that had applied and gave us the feedback of how the interviews and the essays had gone. So that was really encouraging.
I don't know if you know this information, but from that university, what are the, I guess, statistics of applying international students versus the ones that were actually accepted?
I would say, yeah, I don't have official numbers, but I would say the majority of the people that applied, because of this thorough process that they had to guide the students, majority of them were accepted. The problem was to continue studying. So a lot of people started with me, and this is a particularity to my country because of the economical issues, the currency exchange limitations, and all of that stuff. So you needed to exchange your local money into dollars to pay for the education. So if the government didn't approve you to do that, you couldn't pay for school here in the US. Most of us didn't get approved. And a lot of people sadly had to go back after the first semester because of that. A lot of other people were just getting different types of jobs to cover for the semester. Because another cool thing that my school had was that you were able to pay every month. So whatever it was for the semester, they broke it down in a monthly payment. So that gave you a little more opportunity, let's say.
Did your university offer on-campus jobs for students? Was it easy to find something? As some people may know, international students are allowed to work on campus.
So that's the downside. There were no opportunities for job in campus. It was like really small, 2-story building. So no, what they did is that they were able to help us apply for a permit to work based on financial hardship. And the issue with that in itself is that as a student, international student, you made a commitment in the beginning with the US Embassy in your home country that you were going to be able to afford for your tuition and your personal expenses and all of that. So something had to happen along the way, like it happened with some of my classmates, that the government didn't approve that currency exchange, so that they would have, to apply for this, get a temporary permit to work, and then go get a job outside of campus. Those are like the particular situations, but I wouldn't advise people to go solely counting on that from the get-go, because there's a high chance that they will be rejected. That we had a lot of classmates that were rejected. So that's the only thing.
Yeah, I mean, I actually didn't know about this opportunity, and I think I will make a separate video as well about how, yes, in certain situations, due to financial hardship or extreme hardship in terms of something happening in your home country or a huge currency loss kind of thing, that you can actually apply for a work permit to work off campus. However, again, like Maria said, it's hard to get that approved because there has to be very extraneous circumstances. It can't be something like, oh, well, my parents can't help me pay, so I just need to find a job. Because in the very beginning, when you apply for a student visa, you have to prove that you have the financial means to afford the school. Let's go back a little bit to just cultural adjustments. I wanted to talk a little bit about whatever expectations you had of America before coming and then after.
Sure. So for me, it's funny because when I was in my home country in Venezuela, I was thinking about studying in the US. I would think of big universities, and my first thought was Boston, Harvard, New York, all of those big places that you see in the movies. And my family was like, why don't you go where your auntie is, so you can at least have somebody to guide you, to show you the ropes, to at least show you the streets, so you're not entirely by yourself, because it's that much harder. And I was like, okay, and ended up going to Miami, Florida. So in terms of culture shock, I was very blessed, because as a Hispanic person in Miami, you're almost at home. And I want to say almost, because there was some, I guess, reverse culture shock. I saw a lot of people in the beginning that were like really light skin, light eyes. And I was like, oh, I'm American. I'm going to practice my English now. And then they blurted something in Spanish, in Cuban Spanish. And I was like, oh, this is not it. So for the first, I want to say for the entirety of my master's, I was only using English at school. Everywhere else, I was speaking Spanish. So I was not being forced to change in that aspect. If anything, I was hoping for a little more of a shock, and I didn't get it. But if you drive, let's say 1 hour north, then you will get it. And that was my experience eventually. And I think it's all about adjusting expectations. I also thought that being an international student or coming from another country, I was going to be looked at differently. Like Americans were going to be like, oh, let's say, a visitor, a tourist, an international, because that's how people will react in my home country. Whereas here is completely normal to see people from all types of backgrounds and all kinds of food, all kinds of languages. And I don't want to say that all areas are like that, but I've been lucky enough to be in areas that are like that. South Florida, I visited New York, I visited Indiana, I visited Ohio. So in general, it's just about finding areas where immigrants are able to be and do life and feel comfortable, and you'll be fine for the most part. It's just, I don't think it's the people really, the shock. I think it's the systems, the medical system, the financial system, educational system. They're just very particular, and you have to take your time to learn them.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, it's nobody's fault, really. It's just how we grow up. When we are in our home countries, we don't really have to think about things like that. People are people, and you will always be able to find somebody who will support you and who you can make friends with no matter where you are. But the system is what I think ends up breaking, so to say, a lot of people's spirits.
Like you said in the beginning, I think it's all about the connections and asking around. I've had my hurdles with trying to get medical help and understanding all of this, but I've also gotten a lot of positive response when reaching out to friends and people that have been in the area and that know, how to navigate it basically. They will try and explain the things that might be new to you, because to them it's not new, so they don't know what you don't know. But it's all about understanding each other. And yes, I think getting an insurance, if you're able to, from your home country before you come in here as an international student, can help a lot. A lot of these policies are sold online, as in, this is the minimum requirement, so you don't get in trouble. But what they don't tell you is that you might need actual coverage. It's not just about getting in trouble for not having insurance. You might need the coverage later on. So it's worth investing in it if you can.
When you came here, you said human resource management, correct? And even though I believe you mentioned to me before that you wanted to be a clinical psychologist, these are completely different areas of study. So how did that happen?
Well, let's see. The way it works in my home country is that psychology has four different areas. It has clinical psychology, educational psychology, organizational psychology, and health psychology, or social psychology, sorry. It's just that they combine the two. So in that aspect, my options were one of those. And when I was in school doing my undergrad, I was interested in both organizational and clinical almost equally. But I ended up choosing to go the clinical route because that was my experience during my internship. Now, when I wanted to apply for a master's degree in the US, my country had a specific list of careers that they were going to allow people to exchange their local money for into dollars, so we could pay for schooling abroad, in whether it was in the US or any other country. And then clinical psychology was not in that list. So human resources management was, which was the most similar thing to organizational psychology. So I took that route, and they were actually really good with validating my degree in terms of their requirement for the master's. It's a company that's here in South Florida as well. And yeah, it worked out. I actually liked my master's. I wasn't expecting to fall in love with it right away. I was wanting to see opportunities about, just broadening up my professional knowledge, but it really hit the spot.
Yeah, it worked out. I'm really glad. I think a lot of people do struggle with that as well, both international students and immigrants. When they come in, and sometimes they're told that they have to start from the very beginning, regardless of what the education they had in their home country. So, what advice, I guess, if you have any experience with that, would you give? I know every country is kind of different, but like you mentioned something about validating the degree. What was the process like? Was it easy?
Yeah, so that is a one adventure in itself. because in my country I was already considered a psychologist. When I came here, I was like, "What do you mean I'm not a psychologist?" No, you just have an undergrad. Now you need to have a master's. I'm like, "But I was already treating patients. I have my own private practice back home. What are you talking about?" So there was a lot of restructuring there. I would advise people to first contact one of these places that work with validating your degree. I know a big one in the US is called WES, WES. I used one that's big in South Florida that's called Joseph, that's JOSEF, Joseph Silney. And because they have already worked with a lot of people from Latin America in particular, then they know how the careers differentiate. Because, for example, in a lot of places in Latin America, you study for 5 years for one career specifically, whether it's, psychology or it's law school, and that's it. That's your degree. You're good to go work. But in the US, you need to do 4 years of undergrad of different things, choose a major, see what you like, and then choose a specialty in a master's degree, maybe get a license. The whole thing of getting licensed was completely new for me. We don't need licenses in my country, and here you need license even to be a nail technician. So be prepared for those things because you're gonna be putting in time and money into these licenses, but they're worth it because then they assure that the person is capable to do, their job and all these other things that surround the U.S. system when it comes to lawsuits. That's a big thing here that I didn't know about either. Worth looking at how does your degree compare to one here before you come.
And also, I think another shock, in my personal opinion, when I came here was that back in Russia, for example, whatever you choose your bachelor's degree to be, I guess the biggest shock for me was that here in the US, you can study whatever bachelor's major you have, or even master's degree, whatever master's degree you get in whatever area. A lot of people end up working in a completely different area that doesn't relate to their degree absolutely, at all. As long as in some jobs, even as long as you have a master's, they don't even care to know what it was in, as long as you have one. But that's not like that in other countries. In other countries, you're only allowed to get a career if you had the degree in that area.
And I think that's also, it can be encouraging for people that are interested in studying in the US, but they're like, well, I studied law in my home country. I'm not going to start all over and study law in the US, but you can change your career to something else. And the US is really good about that. Actually, my husband just got a federal job. And the requirement was either to have a degree or 3 years of work experience, a degree. It doesn't say a degree in what, because they are going to be doing all the training for him. So
I know that you are now going through the immigration process because that's how we connected in the first place. Can you talk about how was that process for you? What made you want to stay? What immigration routes have you explored in the past?
It's another story in itself. When I came to do my master's, I came to also honestly take a break from everything that was happening in my home country, waiting for things to be better, because that's what people were talking about back in 2014. There were some elections coming up. There were some things, some plans that would point that things were going to change. So I was like, okay, this 2-year master's degree is going to allow me to gain professional preparation so I can then use that in my country, because people would really like somebody with a degree from abroad, and by then things will be better. And that was not the case. The last time I went to my country was in December 2015, and just things went worse. I don't need to talk about Venezuela and politics, but it was just really, really bad. My family was like, please stay over there, try to see how can you go about getting a work visa when you're done with your master's, and try to see if you can work over there. I was like, that's not a straightforward process. And that ties into the whole belief that when you're an international student, you can just come and have a degree here, that you're going to have a work visa, and then you're going to start working in that area where you graduated right away. It wasn't the case for me at all. And it's extremely hard. Out of my class, I want to say we were like 200 maybe graduates. It wasn't big, but out of 200 graduates, and most, I was want to say 90% international students, maybe only 5 people, if anything, got a H1 or work visa. The rest had to, go back or find another opportunity. So that wasn't really the route. Nonetheless, I applied for my OPT, which was the optional practice training. It's a time that you're allowed to work and put your career into practice after you're done with, in this case, a master's degree or an undergrad will also allow that.
Mhm.
So during my OPT, I got in contact with different jobs that were part of that area, human resources management. The thing with my specialty is that it's saturated, I want to say, in certain areas. One of them is Miami. Like there are a lot of people that work in human resources management, so there are not a lot of demand for qualified professionals. And I think choosing the career or the major, it's also a big part of it.
Mhm.
But what ended up happening is that I did get a job where I got some experience in that, but it didn't offer the whole H1 transition. So I was like, well, I guess this is it. Once I'm done with this, then I'm gonna go back home and see what can I do with this. I also have family in Panama, so I was even considering that. It was a difficult situation back then. And what ended up happening is that my family personally participated in trying to help some of the people that were trying to make the situation better for most Venezuelans. And they were like, they deem it's not safe for you to come back at all. So try to find other ways. And in that process is when I got in contact with a friend that had already been through the process of political asylum.
Mhm.
In my view, at that moment, I was like, well, I'm not a politician, so how can I qualify for this?
Mhm.
And it was really new. Like, it's not like nowadays when you hear asylum in the news all the time
Mhm.
because of people, crossing through the border or or coming here in a raft, like it happens a lot in South Florida. Asylum wasn't a big word back then.
Mhm.
And I was lucky and blessed to have the help of this person look at my story and look at what my family had participated in and see through my honest fear and my situation and say, you do qualify for this. Like this is not normal. The fact that you and your family have been exposed doesn't make and you live with it doesn't make it normal. And to the US government, this is not normal living.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and apply for this benefit. So that was around 2017,
Mhm.
January, I want to say. And since then, my asylum case has been pending because then a lot of other people started using and abusing this benefit as well, just for the fact that they were from the same country. Maybe they
Mhm.
didn't have a case, but they just filed a petition. And
Mhm.
what we have right now is a backlog of years of cases that have not gotten an interview. And this is a completely separate issue from USCIS. So my situation has been in a limbo ever since. I've been getting a permit to work that I have to renew.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been just waiting to go through that interview and tell my story and get this over with, really, and be able to call the US my home. Now, around that time, after I had filed and all of that, and then got my permit to work, I started working here. I met my now husband at church. We were both attending the same youth group for a while, and we sat at the opposite ends of I want to say classroom or the
Mhm.
area. So we never
Mhm.
really spoke to each other until a point where the youth program was advertising a financial course called Financial Peace University. So I was like, I'm really interested in this because finances in the US are completely different and this is a headache and I need help, these credit cards. And then somebody told me, hey, go and talk to so and so. He's one of the coordinators of this program. So I went and talked to him and we ended up laughing because his family is from the Caribbean and part of my family as well. So we connected over curry chicken. And that was 2017 and we dated and we got married and in 2020, August 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. So after 3 years, we made that decision and it's been the right decision since. Yeah, that's how now we're navigating this process. When I came to your channel, it was about adjusting status with a family petition. So it's a completely new game.
Yeah, and that's also a very long wait as well, but hopefully not as long as the asylum case. Hopefully that it's going a little bit faster. Of course, putting everything together and sending it off, I would say, is the most stressful thing. But at the same time, the actual waiting afterward is sometimes even worse because you don't know what to do with yourself. Some people don't have work permits. I didn't have a work permit, so it's very difficult. What advice, I guess, would you have for people who are in the waiting period?
Yes, a lot of advice. Actually, I have a permit to work right now from, like I said, from my asylum petition, but that is expiring soon. And I still haven't gotten the one from my adjustment of status. So I'm mentally preparing myself with some of these things. And I even wrote them online. So basically, the stuff that you can do is try to prepare yourself for when you do have your permit to work or even your green card, because a lot of interviews are being done in our sense that they don't give you the permit. They just hop right into the green card. So by then you then will start looking for jobs. You will have to set up your LinkedIn account, your resume in the American format. So if you haven't done that, this is a wonderful time to do so. And just look at similarities, online words that would match with the search you're looking for, and all of those things. Aside from that, some people have been able to get their driver's license with just the notice, the 797 form, that you have a pending case. So I would suggest going to as many DMVs as you can to see if you can get a driver's license. It really goes by whoever's is working that day and that window. So just keep trying until you get one, because it's really important to have an identification document, and that can help with, organizing even documents for your interview, getting a joint account with your spouse if it's the spouse as a sponsor, etc. Aside from that, mental health portion, do not obsess over it. And I know it's easier said than done, but a lot of people have these apps with alerts that, notify them when the case has had any change, or they have to manually refresh them. And that can get really triggering. Also, a lot of people have gotten triggered from just reading forums online. I recently read a Reddit comment that was like, "Thank you so much for the information, but I'm stepping out because I'm obsessing over this." And in the meantime, then you miss the joy of being in the US, being with your loved one, which is what I'm most thankful for. I'm here with my husband, and I'm enjoying that time. Looking at the bright side, practicing gratitude every day, it's a big one as well. And for me, like I said, I'm safe. I got a home. My husband is with me. He works and is able to provide. A lot of people are really waiting, and they're not even in the US. They're in their home country, and they're apart from the loved one when it comes to a marriage adjustment of status. So that is even harder. Just looking at the bright side, basically getting into hobbies, a lot of public libraries. I love public libraries. That's not a thing in my country. Here they have so many resources. You can have free Rosetta Stone and learn a new language while you're waiting for your case, or improve your English. And you can do that from home. You don't have to go to the library.
I agree. I think it's very difficult when your life is sort of in limbo, always in that state of what if, and it's very hard during that time to focus on the present and being thankful for the time that you have now with your spouse and with your family. For me, I didn't have a work permit, so I was just at home all day long by myself. So, I have started to focus more on things that I truly like to do, focus more on like developing myself. And I know for a lot of people, being at home by themselves can get very upsetting and lonely, and you can really fall into depression. And I surely had you can try to use this time to do things that you never had time to do, now that you have all the time in the world.
No, of course. And I think you've been a wonderful example. Like, yes, open a YouTube channel, help other people. I think that was a wonderful project that, yeah, now got us here.
So, and also another thing that I kind of knew behind the scenes a little bit, but I think it would be interesting for the viewers to also see is that you are currently, obviously, you're married to a person who was already living in the United States. So you guys are in an intercultural marriage, but also, I believe, interracial marriage as well, right?
Yes.
So, can you talk about how has that been navigating that? Because marriage in itself is a very big adjustment, regardless where you're from, for anybody. Even if it's two U.S. citizens getting married or anybody else, that is a huge adjustment. But also putting culture into that, that is a whole other thing.
Yeah, so take all the other adventures I've talked about so far about being an international student, scratch that. Those are not my biggest adventures. This is it. It's been amazing, really. So when I talked to you about how we met each other and how we connected was through our Caribbean backgrounds. The thing is, I joke around with my husband and I call him Caribbean gringo. That's how we Latinos call Americans, because nonetheless, he was born and raised in the US with the Caribbean background. I was born and raised in Venezuela with the Caribbean background. So we still had a lot of differences to work through. And basically, I think he has been the most open-minded in the beginning of our dating relationship. He was open to all kinds of experiences and foods and whatever, but the communication was a big issue for me because English is still my second language. I got very proficient just talking to him and talking to his friends, his family, practicing around. I should have given myself a lot more grace because there are a lot of stereotypes and a lot of things that people say that are not necessarily true about having an interracial relationship or intercultural relationship. It's just about being open-minded and trying to understand where the other person is coming from, or really making an effort to say, hey, the way I think or the reason why I'm saying this is because of this, and that, or because in my country is done in this, and such a way. And that was a big lesson for me to explain where I was coming from, where my view is coming from. But aside from that, the whole aspect of it being a interracial couple, that was a shock for me because that's not a term that's used in my country. And I don't mean to say that there's no racism in my country. My husband is Black. You can see I'm Hispanic, but I don't mean to say that there's no racism in my country. It's just that people are not necessarily asked to identify themselves in forms and such within a race group. So it's not as openly talked. And if somebody is in an interracial couple, that's not even questioned. That's just your choice and that's it. But here I had to learn that some people are uncomfortable with those things for an odd reason that I still don't understand. My advantage is that my husband's parents were immigrants themselves from the Caribbean. So they knew a lot of what we've been going through as a couple, what I went through as an international student. They've been very supportive. My family also has been very supportive of our relationship. They love him. They call him son, which never happened with anybody else that I dated before him. So those things helped a lot. And we ended up getting marital couples counseling after we got married. I want to say 6 or 7 months into our marriage. The dynamic obviously was different because we were not living together. We didn't live together before. And then the day-to-day challenges showed up, and we decided to look for couples counseling. He was the one who brought it up. You would think that because I studied psychology, I was the one suggesting. No, he did. He almost demanded it at some point after a fight. And our therapist has been wonderful. And I was like, how is this person going to understand? Yeah, maybe there's a word that I'm not able to come up with because English is not my first language. Maybe she doesn't understand that I'm an immigrant, that he is a Black person, that he's from New York, that we're in South Florida, all these different things. And she has been wonderful. once again, coming with an open mind to even meet the therapist. And I even feel more comfortable now with going through our interview process because of how much time we have had to work these things out and understand each other better. I want to say get more on the same page. Yeah, there is no shame in looking for help. And we did this online, by the way, because of the pandemic. And I think it worked out even better than going to a place in person. This platform is called Regain for Couples Therapy. And yeah, I highly recommend it.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely put a link in the under the video as well for people if they're interested. Let's just quickly touch on the whole like family aspect of it. I know that you said you haven't been back to Venezuela since 2015, and how has that been? I'm sure it's been very difficult, but I guess how's that been for you? And then also maybe give advice to people who are in a very similar situation, who are unable to or are afraid to go back, even if it costs not seeing their family.
Missing the family, it's going to be a daily thing, but it's all about what are your possibilities and what can you do while you are in the US. Like if somebody's in the middle of the adjustment of status process and they cannot travel, then try to make the best out of that time. Now we have the blessing of being able to do FaceTime and all these things with family members. And let's not keep it just like a 5-10 minute call. You can have your person on your cell phone and be cooking, be doing your things, showing them around where you live, showing them part of your life. I think that it has been a big thing for me, just including my family abroad, my parents into my daily thing, so they know what I'm up to, so they can connect, so I can share my experiences with them while I'm going through them and hear theirs as well, because life keeps moving forward for both of us wherever we are. Also, really trying to stay plugged in where you are at the same time. I know it can be difficult and isolating, especially during pandemic times, but try to connect with the place where you are, the culture, the people, the neighbors, the coworkers, if you have them, or classmates. Try to embrace that. Be present. And that was something that my husband told me when we were dating. At some point, he was like, "You're here in body, but you're not here in mind. Your mind is in your WhatsApp with your groups, with your friends that are in other countries," because many of my friends immigrated to other countries because of the situation. You're on the phone, and we're missing out on the things that we're living here. And that was a shock for me because I thought that that was normal and that was what I was supposed to be doing. Otherwise, I would feel guilty for not reaching out to those people. So I had to shift my mindset and say, okay, where are my priorities? What do I want to accomplish? This relationship is the most important relationship to me, which is now my husband. So my family, my new family, needs to come first. And that other one is a big culture shock, because especially for us Latinos, I don't know how is it for Russians. I'm thinking it should be similar, but your family is your mom and dad, and then comes the husband, and like, or maybe mom and dad and the siblings and the cousins and the aunties and the uncles, and then husband comes after all of those people. And something I've learned here that I've embraced from the US culture is your spouse should come first because you're starting to build your new family. So now my priority is here at home in person where I am with him. That doesn't mean to say I'm gonna forget about my extended family, my parents, not at all. It's just trying to diversify my time and my attention. And like I said, trying to just live the present. I think that's my biggest advice. And once you're able to, I'm just planning, I'm waiting on the day my green card or my advanced parole and permit to work arrives. I'm going to visit my family in Panama, my grandma, because I haven't seen her in so long. I know what that's like. I'm not dismissing the feeling. I can't wait to see my grandma. But in the meantime, I'm doing my best here with my partner.